It's time to take a deep breath and quiet the mind. Every breath and thought was energy that brought us to our experience in this moment. We are going to exercise our beliefs in the possible. We will bend and create our own realities. Let's explore how to square our recovery and thrive in life. I welcome you to Recovery Squared Radio with your host, Steve Wofford.
Hello, welcome to Recovery Squared Radio. I'm Steve Wofford. Today I wanted to record an episode on the 4 stages of competence and how the 4 stages of competence relates to how we can recover into our true essence. For me, all this work is rooted in truth. So when we are living and believing false and limiting beliefs that are counter to our true essence, then it makes it more difficult for us to create the lives that we want. The 4 stages of competence is a great tool that I use personally to find out where I'm at, but it's also a tool I use in my coaching to find out where a client is and what's kind of the next step. Because as we go on this journey, it's important this is a map or a tool that we can use to kind of help guide us in what we have to do in where we're at right now, and then also get to the next level. So we can say, okay, I'm cool. I'm right here. I know where I'm at. And here's the next step. Or if we revert, we can always go back, oops, I took 3 steps forward. I just took 1 back. And so it's just a great tool to find out where you're at. It was initially described as the 4 stages of learning any new skill. And so basically the levels are unconscious incompetence. Basically, you are not aware or conscious of your dysfunction. And level 2 is conscious incompetence. So you realize your areas of dysfunction and you start working on them. You have not mastered them yet. Level 3 is conscious competence. Basically, you get good at doing it, and it requires work for you to maintain it. And level 4 is unconscious competence. And this is kind of where you go on autopilot. You don't really have to think about it. And now in a neutral subject, let's use riding a bike. When you're unconscious incompetence, you really don't know much about the bike or that it's useful. You have not seen any desire to want to learn or use it. And maybe then you realize that, hey, I want to learn a bike. I can see that guy get into his friend's house a lot quicker. That will help me. So then you become aware at the conscious incompetence. You realize that, hey, I see that bike. It might help me, but I haven't learned it yet. And level 3 is the conscious competence, where you practice riding the bike. You may be a little wobbly, but you're getting better at it and better at it and better at it. You're doing work to maybe you ride it extra, or you get someone to help you learn how to ride better. And then number 4 is unconscious competence. And that's where you get on it and you don't really think about it. I know that last time I got on a bike, I didn't really have to think. I just got on it and I rode. I didn't have to think about it very much. This can also be put into a negative or a positive situation. Like, let's take drugs and alcohol, for example. Basically, when we're younger, we are at the unconscious incompetence level. We don't really know it exists. We don't know what it's going to do to us. And then we become aware that it might help us. And so we entered the conscious incompetence, where maybe we're using it, but we don't really understand. We haven't figured out how to use it yet. And then we get to the level 3 of conscious competence. And then we start getting good at using it. And maybe we have friends that are using it. And then we turn into experts when we step into the unconscious competence. And you can just go on autopilot, and it becomes just a lifestyle and a way of living to where you don't think about it anymore. Your time and resources are structured around it to where you just don't think about it anymore. The reverse can also be true when maybe you're at that level where you are unconscious competence in using drugs or alcohol. But then you become, this is kind of interesting because then you become unconscious incompetence that you likely need help, right? And this is the denial phase. And then maybe some arrests, relationship issues, money issues, health issues, any number of issues can come up where you enter the conscious incompetence. You're like, I think I have a problem, but I'm not really sure how to fix it. And then maybe you start trying and relapsing and kind of trying but failing. I know that was certainly my story. And then level 3 is conscious competence, where you start doing things to reinforce getting well or staying clean. That could be going to meetings, counselors, coaches, mentors, yoga, eating healthy. You're basically doing the work to fix whatever problem you're trying to fix. You're putting intention and action into it. You're doing. And then you can enter the unconscious competence phase, where you basically don't have to do any work to get that desired result anyway. And this is where you start helping other people. Maybe you sponsor people, you become a coach, you start helping people. And in terms of my recovery, that's kind of where I operate at today. I don't need to maintain my quote unquote sobriety because it's just a way of life now. And I'm at the point where I can help spread this type of information to other people. Now, where this gets really interesting is when we tie it to our subconscious. I know this might be confusing. Unconscious, incompetent, subconscious. This is where we bring in the subconscious mind. The subconscious is like the operating system of our being. Think of it as Mac or Windows, but then you have an application of consciousness. And the subconscious processes something like 4 billion bits of information a second, whereas our conscious mind only processes 2,000 bits of information per second. And if you think of that in computer terms, that's like the operating system pretty much running the show. But you might have one single application open, but you can only see like the words in your word processor. You're not actually seeing all the crazy math and graphic stuff that's going on in the background. And what's interesting is that a lot of our beliefs, our beliefs are held in our subconscious to where we are not always conscious of them. And so this is where the unconscious or conscious, basically, and it's an awareness of where we're at. And so when we apply these 4 levels to truth, it becomes a very powerful tool to help align yourself and stand in truth. And so to kind of break this down, when you're at the first level, you're at the unconscious incompetence level. And so basically what that means is that you are not aware of your false and limiting beliefs. You're not aware of the lies and the deception through your beliefs that you're living under. And it's not until you realize you become aware of them, the dysfunction that it's creating. Because what happens when we're operating under these, the mind will try to make sense of our beliefs. And that's why you see patterns of dysfunction in our life, whether it's addiction, depression, disorders, relationship issues that keep showing up. And so when we become aware of them, we enter the conscious incompetence level. And we say, okay, I'm riding on this false or limiting belief, like I'm unlovable, I'm judging myself, I'm bad, and other types of limiting beliefs. And then as we become aware of them, we start to want to practice them, and we enter the conscious competence. And that's where affirmations, meditation, journaling, working with mentors, coaches, sponsors, things like that, we're doing work to basically reprogram our subconscious. And then we can root out those lies and deceptions and fully write on that truth. We can enter the unconscious competence where we don't have to do work. We just live in truth. And this is when we're fully in alignment to this truth, this is where bliss and flow exists. And so I can share something about an experience I had today. I had the opportunity to speak at a business organization this morning. And last night when I was preparing, I was contemplating whether I should memorize my speech. How much should I prepare? And what I realized was that, and this is something I kind of learned because I was at that place where, it's public speaking. It can be a very scary thing, especially how vulnerable I am. I mean, and I talk about the worst day of my life on episode number 7 on how I shifted the worst day of my life into the best thing of my life. You can find it at recoverysquared.com/7. And so I share a lot of intimate details in front of a group of people. And so in the past, this was something where I had to do a lot of work preparing because I was afraid of what people were going to think. I didn't want to mess up. And basically I had a lot of fears. And so by me going through that process, I realized, okay, those were fears and that they're going to judge me. And so that was a limiting belief. And then I started to overcome some of those things. And then I started memorizing things quite a bit. And it ended up being just too much work. But as I've learned to live in my unconscious competence and standing in my truth, standing in love, that since I know my truth, I can just speak freely on this. I did a quick a breakdown of how I was going to chunk up my presentation and the different exercises we were going to do, but I didn't know what I was going to say. I was just going to speak from my heart. And this is where the unconscious competence exists. It's something we don't have to think about. We don't have to do work for. We can just be and stand in our truth and love people. We don't have to do work for it. This is where you truly flow. This is where you truly love. If this message resonates with you, I'd love to send you the Recovery Squared Belief Guide. This guide was developed to help people utilize and identify these beliefs and live in that unconscious competence level. This is where flow, bliss, and love live. To access it, visit recoverysquared.com and click on the Get Access button, and I'll send it to you via email. I'm also going to make the show notes available that will outline everything that we talked about on this show. And if you visit recoverysquared.com/13. I love you, and thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to Recovery Squared Radio. Please visit recoverysquared.com for access to resources on squaring your recovery. And as a reminder, act without doing. Create space between your thoughts and actions.